So yeah, I'm here to talk to you today about why PGR internships are worth doing during your PhD. I am basing a lot of this on my work with research and development, but I have done other things. So I'm going to talk about just generally why you should do internships and why it fits in all situations. So first of all, here we go. Who am I? So many of you will have met me before. I recognise some faces from various induction week things last week. But I'm Emily, and I'm a PhD researcher in Scottish literature. I'm actually, contrary to what Joanna said at the start of the conference, I am actually a first-year PhD researcher, but I've been at Glasgow since the dawn of time. I did my undergrad and my master's here, and my master's was a master's by research. So new PhD student, not a new PGR. And I'm looking at the self-presentation of Mary Queen of Scots in poetry and correspondence. So that's fun. Alongside that, I'm the current PGR events intern with research and development at the university, which means that I run the various PGR competitions here at Glasgow. So like 3-minute thesis, love letter to your thesis, visualize your thesis, and as well as helping to organise big PGR events like induction week and, well, today. Alongside that, I'm also actually a postgrad intern with the Centre for Scottish and Celtic Studies at the university. So I do have experience across a range of internships. And I actually came to research and development through doing another internship last summer, which was helping to host the Guild Summer School, which brought together researchers from across Europe virtually at University of Glasgow for a week of PhD-related training. So during that role, that was how I learned about the role of the PGR office intern, which was at the time held by the wonderful Charlie Rex. And as you can see from my presence here today, it clearly pretty much it excited me quite a lot because I applied for it when it came up again, and I started in October. I'm also a Gemini, which might explain why I try and wear so many different hats if you're into that sort of thing. So what do my internships entail? This obviously really depends on the specific internship, but some of the tasks that I am or have been responsible for across all of the different internships that I've done have included organising and running events and competitions, designing online marketing materials for those events, redesigning and maintaining university web pages, using online tools like Eventbrite and Banana Tag for advertising, editing videos, presenting to or teaching other PGRs, writing blog posts about research seminars, and much, much more. It's quite hard to actually distill down all of what I've done, but across all my different roles, I've been able to get a lot of different experiences that I wouldn't have been able to do otherwise. And so what's the point? Or why should you bother undertaking internships during your PhD? So PhDs, I know, can already be really difficult and time consuming, and we're often taught to think of our research akin to a 9-to-5 job. So given this is understandable for you to question why you'd willingly want to pile something else onto your already teetering pile of plates by taking on internships, especially if they aren't directly applicable to your research field, especially after what we were talking about this morning with sustainable productivity, you might wonder why you would want to take on more work on top of the PhD. If you're self-funded, it's more obvious why you'd be interested in taking on a paid position, obviously. But things do get trickier when it comes to funded students who might be more concerned about weighing up time commitment, or when it comes to internships that aren't paid, as I know some of them are. But despite those things, there are a range of reasons for why you should consider looking into and taking on internships alongside your PhD that aren't related solely to money. I'm going to take you through my top 5. So this stuff applies to a whole range of jobs that you could do alongside your PhD, but I'm of course going to be speaking from my own experience, specifically as PGR events intern. So the first one is that you get to gain new skills. Obviously, the exact shape of these skills will differ depending on the internship, but one thing you can be certain of is that an internship will leave you with new skills or experiences that you didn't have beforehand. That's kind of the point of them. Even just the knowledge of working within different team structures and working environments can be really beneficial to you later down the line, especially if the internship you undertake is your first experience of professional or office-based work. So I think the thing to remember is that the main difference between an internship and a more normal job is that internships are designed to allow you to develop skills that you didn't previously have. You don't have to jump into them already knowing how to do everything. And in most cases, the people you're working with will want to make sure you're getting the most out of it that you could be. That's why they hire an intern rather than just advertising for a normal job. Number 2, you have to make new connections. Whether your internship is related to academia or not, one of the main benefits of undertaking internships is that you'll get to meet and work with more people than you generally would just in the course of your PhD research alone. So that could be in the form of making connections with professionals in the industry, gaining a wider network of connections to academics in your field, depending on if it's a more academic internship, or even getting to spend more time meeting more of your PGR peers, which is one of my favorite parts about what I currently do. PhDs can be a really solitary affair, which I'm sure a lot of us are aware of. So internships can be a really good way to widen your peer, academic and professional networks, which can in turn alleviate some of the pressure from maybe your relationship with your supervisors or your relationships just within your subject area. Number 3 is future planning. So this relates really very closely to the first 2 reasons, but I do think that it's important enough to also mention on its own. Internships help you to begin to shape a plan for your post-PhD future and can also help act as stepping stones onto that first leg of that plan. For example, if you intern in a role that gives you lots of skills specific to a future job, that's great. It'll both help you to decide if that might be something you want to do later down the line, and it'll also give you a leg up on your CV. That can be especially helpful if you don't want to go into academia post-PhD by keeping your options open. But even if you do want to work in academia later on, working in internships within your school or within a subject-related research centre or network can give you a good breadth of knowledge and connections that you don't get from your PhD or your supervisory relationships alone. And it can help sort of pad out your academic CV in a way that other jobs just won't. The good thing about internships is that because they're often for more professional jobs than, say, other jobs you may work alongside your PhD, like bar work or retail, even if they're not specifically academically linked, there are often skills that you can pinch from those roles that will fit onto an academic CV and will help make you look better if you do want to go into academia. Number 4 is learning to manage your time better. So it does go without saying that by undertaking an internship, you'll probably be taking on more working hours than you currently do with your PhD, with your PhD alone. And whilst that can seem daunting, especially if your PhD is already full-time, and you'll feel like you're working so many hours, you can get much better at, sorry, I completely lost my place there. It can actually, in the long term, help to improve your workflow. So it does seem a bit counterintuitive, but when you have less time to devote to specific things and a list of things that still need to be done no matter what, you do get much better at prioritizing tasks and working smarter, not harder. So the example I would give for this is that I'm a lot better at distilling things like reading or writing into specific time periods now, because I'm being forced to do that because I've got other work that needs to be completed at certain times and in a certain time frame. So rather than just spending entire days on sort of the abstracted concepts of reading or writing, I now have to try and fit it into set time periods alongside other things, which doesn't mean that I do less of it. It just means that I'm actually a lot better at doing it in a focused way. So essentially, you sort of develop the ability to complete your tasks, both those for the internship and the PhD, more quickly and eventually more easily than you could before. When you have less time to spend on something, you stop sort of agonizing over the details and you just get it done, which as PhD students who are so zeroed in on a very specific topic for 3 or 4 years, it's actually a very valuable skill to learn. It also does sort of stop you from doing that constant what Emma was talking about this morning, the sort of constantly tinkering your productivity systems rather than actually doing anything productive. You kind of stop having the chance to do that when you get a bit busier. And this is especially so if you're lucky enough to work an internship where you're able to sort of broadly set your own hours. You can learn to balance them both alongside each other and fit different tasks in at the times that work best for you doing them. And then my final point for a wrap up is that it gives me more of a sense of perspective and a sense of fulfillment than I get from my PhD alone. So this follows directly on from the last one, but my favorite part about working this internship alongside my PhD is the sense of perspective it provides me on the whole PhD experience. We're often told to remember that we are more than just our PhD, but it can be really difficult to implement that thinking into our everyday lives. But working as the events intern alongside my PhD kind of forces me to do this. Having tasks that I have to get done on a weekly basis that are completely separate from my PhD research allows me the space to reflect on who I am professionally out with my research, which means that I feel less defined by my academic identity alone. Along the same lines as that, the internship brings me an enormous sense of fulfillment, both on a longer term, but also on a daily basis. In terms of the day-to-day, it's really helpful for my sense of productivity that on the days that my PhD isn't going so well, that I'm still ticking tasks off of my to-do list. With my internships, the tasks are generally smaller and more easily defined than the sort of PhD tasks of reading and writing. So on a day where you don't feel productive, it's quite nice to have smaller things that can be ticked off the to-do list. And on a broader basis, there's something really professionally and personally fulfilling in the work that I do. Not only has this role allowed me to get a lot more deeply involved in the wider PGR community here at Glasgow than I probably would have done if I hadn't taken on the role, but I also get to leave work on many days feeling like I've helped my peers in some way, whether that's through like campus tours or Q&As during induction week or by running the big PGR competitions and events that we run. Though the role often challenges me and pushes me out of my comfort zone a lot, the hardest days are often also the most fulfilling in this way. And the people I come into contact with working here really are the best. And that goes for both the PGRs and the staff at Research and Innovation Services. And then I was just going to finish up by sort of showing you some sort of places that you can look to find different internships. So there are an infinite number of answers to this question, but some of the places you might want to start as a PGR at Glasgow are the UofG Internships Hub. I'll put the link in the chat when I stop sharing my screen, but this is a great resource as it'll let you know about any internships that become available internally within the university, as well as loads of external ones that they advertise. And they have a mailing list that you can sign up to. And that is incidentally where Research and Innovation Services advertises this role when it becomes open, when I'm not working it anymore. Hint, hint. You can also look towards your school or subject area. Bigger, more formal internships may also be advertised via the Internship Hub, but often there are sort of smaller projects that your school might circulate by just around the PGRs within the subject area. And they might have a less formal application process. It might just be a sort of send me an email about why you should do this thing that does sometimes happen. And then also one to be aware of is your funding body or funding bodies for your research area, for your subject area. So some funding bodies offer sort of more formal internship programs. So I'm a SAGSA, an Arts and Humanities funded student, and SAGSA have an internship scheme that opens for applications every October, where they offer internships with various industry partners, or they also let you create your own. But those internships are not just open to SAGSA funded students, they're open to any students, any researchers within the arts and humanities in Scotland. So that's why I say to look to the funding bodies for your subject area, because they might also have internship schemes that aren't just for their funded students. So even if you're not funded by them, you can apply for them. And there's also many more places to look, but I can't list them all, unfortunately. Although Heloise's presentation later on might give you some more ideas about academic jobs and where to find them. So yes, and I think that's me for the day. Yes, thank you. I hope I've convinced you to give internships a go alongside your PhD.